vast indifference. One more time. Vast indifference. So what does that really mean? Maybe lack of interest or concern overall. Now, it could be directed at how we are, and it can also be directed on how your supposed savior would look upon our situation. So it's manyfold. The description could be in many different ways. And I'll think about it this way. Whether or not you believe that there is a savior or you have a savior or whatever, and if I ever speak to anybody, that I would ask them, okay, where is the savior? Where is your savior? My response would always be, if you look in the mirror, you're always going to see your savior. Because you know for a fact, you know from experience, that if you ever needed to get out of a situation, yourself out of a situation, if you are an independent individual, you know that the only person that you could rely on in that situation is going to be yourself. Now, I know, maybe you've got a husband or wife or a family member that you can rely on, but I'm talking about a personal situation. Say you're out in your car and you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody else, so it's got to be you. And this is kind of the situation we're in. This is the situation we're in right now. Yes, I understand, but even if you have a great loving spouse or family member or friend, that doesn't mean they always think and believe the same way that you do. Everybody's going to have their own separate sets of belief system, and that's all going to affect the outcome. But you have to rely on yourself. Even if you have a savior that you believe is there, it's still, you got to be number one. Because we're in many different situations. Now, in our daily lives, we've always been taught, well, if you have an emergency, you call the police or you call an ambulance. Little by little, as you'll notice, those options are dwindling. We're told to depend on different things in our life. You depend on the water coming out of your faucet when you turn it on. You depend on electricity being at the receptacle when you plug something in or when you turn something on. You expect your cell phone service to work every time you have your phone on or the internet. And, if you got to call the police, you got to call the ambulance. What we've been programmed to is to depend on all these things. And once you feel comfortable depending on all these things, then they begin to remove those. They begin to take them away. So, well, if you really want this, then you're going to have to do this. Whether you're going to have to pay more money or you're going to have to jump through all these hoops, that's part of what's going on around us. And you'll see it through the media and everything else. But it's all about us being more dependent. Not only are we already dependent on these things, it's going to be more difficult to get them. So you're going to have to depend more, in other words. You're going to have to put yourself out farther. You're going to have to be more of a dependent. So that's what's happening all around us. We all want to look more inward. And that's something we have to all do. But we also, in the meantime, have to take care of our physical lives, our physical situation, as I would say. Whether we know or not whether we believe it or not, that we've got this non-physical situation going on around us, we still have it. And we still have our physical situation. Neither one of them can we ignore and they'll go away. Now, the non-physical has an effect on the physical. So that's why I'm trying to work on that portion of it, taking back our power. But I also realize that even though I'm doing that, I still have to do this, the physical part, on a regular, moment by moment, daily basis. I still have to work within that. And if we want to be actual independent beings, it has to do with the non-physical and the physical. So you have to work on both of them. You can't just pick one. One by itself won't do everything. Because if we're not able to affect the non-physical to that degree immediately, which we aren't, takes time, then we still have to deal with the physical. And we have to deal with them on their own levels. But vast indifference means there's a level of uncaring. If we're programmed to not like the homeless or not like people from a certain area and, just divide and conquer, the more reasons why we have to not like somebody, the more we don't like them. And whether it's they're homeless or whatever, where they're from or whatever, we're being pitted against each other. Because if we're fighting within our own nation against each other, then it's called divide and conquer. They can divide us and then conquer us. It's all about the programming. And we are relatively more accepting of the programming than we are of what's going on around us. Realizing the reality of what's going on around us. Because we can become focused on something very simple to get us to react, whether it's something you really get pissed off about or it's costing us money or whatever, versus having empathy for some of the people that may be in a bad situation, but now they have become the perpetrators, according to the media, perpetrators of our problems. Because the ones that sit up in the top, they steer the focus of the majority of the population in different directions. So they focus the hate or whatever in directions in order to get the desired outcome. There's always going to be people that don't fall into that. But as long as they have the majority of people believing and buying into it and following their guidance, it's always going to be that way. So when we are trying to do what we're doing, we are going against people, the resistance against us is some of it is our own family. Because you're trying to better yourself, and if you're not falling in line, then you're feeling the pressure. Some of us are, the resistance from people that you know because they don't understand. And they don't want to listen because obviously they're being guided in the wrong direction. So there's many levels of vast indifference all over. And it almost becomes confusing only because it's so widespread. I mean, you could probably pick any subject and it's going to relate to it. And the more you see, the more you will tend to feel that you don't have the ability to make that change, that you don't have the ability to do anything about it, is because the problem gets so big that you feel like you don't have the faculties to affect that problem. And that's part of what it is. Because the more into it and the farther we go, the harder it looks.